And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast from Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk, Spartan Stadium. For the last time this year, Michigan State loses 39-31 double overtime against Indiana. You guys all saw it. Old brass platoon goes back to Bloomington, but more importantly, Michigan State with their hopes and chances of maybe having a really bright, upbeat ending to a very challenging season. Really on the edge of the cliff now. I mean, at halftime, 24-7, Michigan State looked good to the point where I'm like, man, Michigan State's doing to Indiana what a good team is supposed to do to Indiana. That's what Ohio State did to Indiana. That's what Penn State did to Indiana the last 2 weeks. Michigan State, I thought, was on track to doing that, maybe winning this one 40-10, something like that. And I was like, man, they got a chance to beat Penn State. Well, Penn State's playing real well right now against Rutgers, and Michigan State's chances of winning that game and getting to 500 and getting a bowl bid now, I mean, it's well below 40% now, but at halftime of this game, a lot of things seemed possible. Even an 8-5 season even looked possible, which would have given the program such momentum. And I hate for every game to be a state of the program address, but it kind of feels that way. Am I misreading that from the outside and even internally? And maybe that's even justified. But this one, first half was good, second half collapse, overtime, missed a field goal and regulation. Tough one for Michigan State fans, and I got to give credit to the Michigan State fans that were here, those that were here and that stayed. It was cold, and to those people, I wish I could give them a game trophy of some sort.
Those people totally deserve better in this game from Michigan State coaches, Michigan State players, and the seniors that played today deserve better than they got. You think of a guy like Eli Collins or Jaden Reed or all those dudes. They deserve a win in this game. This is the most disappointing loss in this stadium going back since the John L. Smith era. This was like, when I was walking down to the press conference afterwards, I'm just listening to a casual conversation with the fans that stayed, milling about in the concourse, and they were talking about, hey, they felt a whole lot like John L. Smith era. And it did, because of the special teams failures in this game that directly contributed to this loss. You're looking at 168 kick return yards, including a 88 one for a touchdown. You're looking at missed field goals, bad operation, punting errors based on not the punter, but the snapping operation. And kind of a ton of different things went wrong, for Michigan State in this game. And you just don't – we haven't been part of too many of these where a team is up 24-7 at halftime and they lose a game like this, or up 31-14 in the second half and they lose a game like this. It's just a lot of different things that happen to Michigan State. And, it's one play here or there, and I understand it's a game of inches, but this is a game that Michigan State absolutely had to win. When they were up 24-7, I wasn't as optimistic as you about how they could handle Penn State, because I saw the flaws I saw in this Michigan State team were apparent in the first half as much as they were in the second half in terms of run defense. That option quarterback. He didn't even complete a single pass in the first half. But what he had was the ability to extend plays with his legs and gain yardage with his legs. And all of a sudden you have a team that only rushes for 87 yards a game, 127th in college football. Going into this game, you have a team that rushes for 200, 250, which is unacceptable. But some of that had to do with Michigan State's flaws in personnel. With Jalen Hunt on the end, missed tackles. I think of that 79-yard touchdown run. Should have never got more than 15 on that. I really felt like Michigan State's DBs were out of position on that. Someone that I believe has made those kind of mistakes in the past, and it should have never happened like this. I don't see how Michigan State beats Penn State on the road next week. Even if Michigan State had gotten momentum from this game, this was a sigh of relief game. Michigan State's pushing for bowl eligibility. They should have got it. They didn't today. I just don't see it happening. That's why this is a real disappointment. I don't think they have the pieces, to beat Penn State. Now, they had not as many. They were undermanned against Illinois. Last time we went on the road and covered a big game, Michigan State won that game. This is different. Penn State will have had 3 weeks of film on Michigan State playing with limited numbers on the defensive line. And that is the one thing I keep on going back to. Everyone's like, well, how is Michigan State giving up 200 yards? Well, one of those things is that they don't have good population of the football from the defensive backs in a lot of ways, and that is really exacerbated when you have a defensive tackle playing defensive end and trying to run sideline to sideline to make plays. If he's not going to make the plays, the linebacker's got to make it. Defensive backs have to make it. If a linebacker misses a tackle, that's a touchdown right now.
Yeah, it only takes slippage in one area, and that's what Illinois didn't have. They didn't know that Michigan State was going to play 4 defensive tackles on the defensive line. The last 2 opponents have seen that. Jalen Hunt's a good player doing his best, but you isolate him and leave him unblocked and option him, and he just can't. It's hard for that guy to cover enough space to make that happen. Everybody else has to be really good around him to keep it solvent. And Michigan State at the cornerback position against the run has been leaky in a lot of ways. The touchdown that got out, I'm pretty sure Michigan State was in single safety deep. Michigan State was doing a lot of single, like cover 3 is one. It's not a single safety deep, but it's a one deep. It's a one safety high situation. You got the other safety in, so it's an 8-man front or a multiple man, an extra man front. So you're trying to stop the run before it gets out. But if it does get out, you've got a chance. You're more likely susceptible to give up a big play, which we saw the first play of the second half. For Michigan State to give up yardage like this against the ground attack, quarterback is part of it. But, Sean Shiver, whatever his name is, he had some success throughout the day. Last week, Rutgers, ran it up Michigan State's tailpipe pretty good on the ground. The defensive end has something to do with it. But, I've always said that you are not going to be consistent as a program until you can consistently be solvent against the run.
Right.
And that goes back to when we were covering D'Antonio, and when it became clear week after week that Michigan State was going to be good against the run, that's when you have a chance to be consistent as a football team and as a football program. This team, as long as they can't stop the run consistently, they're not going to be consistent as a team or a program until and unless that gets done.
You look at the D'Antonio era, and there were some ups and downs, and there were some years where they were sub 500. But I will say this: when you have a top 50 run defense, which D'Antonio had pretty much throughout the entire era, except for maybe 2016, a couple other examples. But when you have that, when you have the ability to stop the run, it almost feels like the ceiling or the floor for your season is a 7-win season in some ways, or you're 500. And Michigan State, well, they've been able to get a lot more running yards in the last couple of weeks. They haven't been able to stop the run, and that was a big problem. I felt like that Shiver was a decent running back, but not great. I felt like the guy last week for Rutgers was a better tailback. Now, I do feel like Michigan State, when Avery Dunn and Michael Fletcher were in the game, I felt like they were optionless, and I think they made some decent plays. But he's coming off an injury. I'm not sure how many snaps that he can play. Avery Dunn is a guy that's coming, and he had a pretty good game today. He had a pretty good game last week, and that's a positive. But Michigan State needs more than it has, and injuries are to blame. This is going to be a thin year defensive end wise, injuries and suspensions. I mean, you look at those two things. The personnel, in my opinion, to stop the run in these last few weeks is in the program. It's just not available right now.
Mm. And with Michigan State and Peyton Thorne and Xavier Henderson talking about it after the game, kind of demoralizing. He said the locker room was silent. They've had some losses before, get back up, but this one's going to be harder for them to get back up. Penn State's going to be good. I was watching Penn State against Indiana a couple weeks ago, and Penn State's better than they were when they played Michigan. Against Michigan, they were kind of passive and having gap responsibility errors. They have good speed and good talent. They looked a lot different against Ohio State, a lot different against Indiana. Penn State is running better on defense, winning collisions and doing it correctly. Manny Diaz, who I've been critical of, I give him credit. So this is going to be a tough one for Michigan State to get off the ground and to salvage a postseason of any kind. And what this does to the players, they've gotten off the mat so many times this season. Peyton Thorne comes out, throws for about 280, 285. I thought through 3/4 of the game plus, I thought he was doing a really good job in very challenging conditions, windy conditions, with their intermediate pass game. I thought he was making good reads, and I thought that Michigan State had good route combinations for the intermediate pass game, and I thought it was really, really excellent. But then they went they would do things that they wouldn't, complete the icing on the cake. Whether it be, the first drive of the game, 4th and 1, they run that toss play. That was the 4th down choices have been kind of strange. 8 minutes ago, 4th and short, and they threw that post to Keon Coleman, and Daniel Barker breaks off his route to the middle. We asked a little bit about that, and Thorne said that on that route, Daniel Barker said he was getting outside leverage, so he broke his route away from the leverage. So that's kind of an option route for him, but Coleman is a post all the way, and you had 2 receivers in the same area, which hurt the traffic for Coleman. Whether or not he would have caught that, maybe not, but it still was not. It was not ideal execution in that one. And of course, down the stretch, some of the other things, the fourth down play, people are asking about Elijah Collins or why Michigan State didn't center it for a field goal to win in regulation. Elijah Collins revealed that the play call was called to the right. He was supposed to take it to the right, which would maybe give him a touchdown or at worst center the ball. And he said he cut it back because he thought there might be a crease there. And he took blame for that. Of course, the kicker's got to make that field goal anyway, but the kicker kicks it straight, but he kicks it right where he was lined up and misses it. So execution, guys doing their own thing. Barker doing his own thing on that one. Collins doing his own thing on this one. First two drives in the second half, Michigan State goes 3 and out, 3 and out. I'm not sure if it's 3 and out, but the two things that stalled the drive, Daniel Barker dropped a pass on third down. Next time it's 3rd and 1. He gets beat inside by Bryant, good defensive end. On 3rd and 1, they lose 2 yards, punt. After a 24-7 lead, those two plays, Barker, it's just kind of slippage. It's slippage.
I mean, I don't know if you can call it slippage this year at this point in the year with Daniel Barker, with DJ Barker. You can't call it that because every game there's an example of that, him not being in the right spot. Every time, you and I were talking about this, right? We're trying to figure out, okay, what happened on that play, and I felt like it didn't look right. And so when it doesn't look right, I mean, who would you think would be to blame? The same guy that screwed it up all year long. And the thing that Tucker's talked about quite a bit is like doing simple better. And DJ Barker will give you the frosting. He'll give you the one-handed catch, and you'll be like, hey, that was a great catch. But then it'll be a wide open catch like that drop on the first series of the second half. Michigan State was moving the ball. That would have been big. It's a first down, and if Michigan State scores another touchdown, gets points on the board, that game is over. But not only did he drop the pass in that instance, Indiana went and scored a touchdown on the very next series. Now Michigan State got points back, and they ended up having the same margin in terms of lead that they had prior to that drop pass. But you can't have mistakes like that. You can't have guys like Amir Speed missing tackles or not even trying to tackle in run support.
I didn't notice that you mentioned that. I'm sure I'll see it when I go back.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
And if I'm wrong, then I'll take credit for it, like on a message board or something like that. But it was just my impression, and it's something we've seen over and over and over again with him. And that's one thing where depth really hurts you because Ronald Williams wasn't available for this game. He's dinged up, so you can't go. You can't go to someone, and pull the plug on him and say, hey, listen, man, you made a mistake because you've got no one behind him. And that's been a consistent issue this year. The quality control things, I'll go back to it's hard to say the word slippage when you've seen those quality control mistakes all season long. And I don't know what recourse Michigan State has to change that. I'm not sure they do. Like defensive line personnel, you're stuck with what you got, but you would like to see more accountability from certain players than they're giving. I thought Peyton Thorne played a great game for the most part, and
I did too.
Even in the interception, if you go back and look at it, Jeremy Bernard was hammered before that.
Yeah,
that could have been easily a flag. If it was, that would maybe a different ball game. Credit to Indiana for making for putting together a game plan that gave their team a good chance to be in the game at the very end. And some of Indiana's strengths in this game matched up with Michigan State's weaknesses, but when you look at it numbers-wise, there's no reason why this should have been a loss for Michigan State.
I give credit to Tom Allen too. He was, he's very fired up as a coach. Almost, I appreciate his youthful exuberance or whatever, but he was trying to keep his team fired up this week. They had lost 7 straight. He's trying to get his team jacked up to win 2 trophy games at the end of the year. They were behind 24-7. Anytime they had a breath of life in this game, he was whooping it up on the sideline. He showed some leadership and brought him back.
And I'm not going to say this game mattered more to them, but I'm sure they were talking about the old brass spittoon more than Michigan State was. We had a press conference earlier this week, and the trophy was not mentioned once. In that press conference, and I'm not saying Michigan State players took this thing for granted. I certainly don't believe that's the case, but I do think that they just had to be better. If you want to look at one area that absolutely has to be better, and it's been, I think, been a consistent issue all season long, special teams.
Yeah.
And then I don't see how you can make excuses for that. I mean, beyond obvious injuries to a long snapper, but this has been a consistent problem. There's been other times where teams are close to busting out big ones. And this was supposed to be a year where special teams, because of more players coming into the program and good athletes getting into the program, this was supposed to be a year where there were better special teams players.
You mean like coverage-wise?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we heard coming in. Special teams is going to be good this year.
I don't think coverage hasn't been bad all year, has it?
There's been some that are close, and there's been a couple in the last couple of weeks. I felt like Rutgers was close to busting a couple, and I just feel like that's the one area. That's the one area that Indiana can beat you. That guy's a really, really good return man, and I'm not sure what you could have done, to scheme it up any differently.
Did you hear Tucker say sometimes we don't know which direction the kick is going, which is a problem?
Yeah.
In other words, they can't trust the kickoff guy to hit it where it's supposed to be hit.
So then you change the kickoff guy. I mean, I know Ben Patton's not, if he's more.
I don't know.
I don't know what you're supposed to be doing per se, but there's other times where the kickoff has been fine. You think back to the Illinois game, how windy that was, and I thought Michigan State did really good on kickoffs. In this one, I think it was more of a coverage deal, and I think Michigan State, that's the one guy that can beat you on the Indiana team. That's the most explosive, most dangerous dude on the team, and I think you have to account for him better. It was a failure today, just from the jump.
Opening kickoff, 46-yard return to the 50-yard line. 3 plays later, they're up 7-0. Michigan State has the lead 24-7. That touchdown looked like an outlier there for a moment, but after Michigan State scored to make it 31-14 or whatever it was, the kickoff return for a touchdown, it looked to me like Dylan Tatum got lost leverage a little bit on that one in coverage. Just 3 or 4 plays, just like when Michigan State lost to Illinois. A lot of people comparing it to that game back in 2019 when Michigan State was 5-6, looking like they weren't going to go to a bowl game.
How much was Michigan State up by in that game?
24, 25 points, something like that.
Yeah, I lose track of that. But this one really felt like, just simply because it felt like everything that could have gone wrong for Michigan State down the stretch, including the special teams stuff, went wrong for Michigan State. That's why I felt like that's why it resonated with me when I heard fans mumbling about the John L. Smith era, and a lot of you that are old dudes like I am that have been around, or older than I am that have been around and experienced that can probably feel the same way. Kicking, punting, missed field goals, and I know they said they were trying to get a touchdown in that last offensive possession, but Michigan State did such a good job marching the ball down the field, and I feel like with as much trouble Michigan State has had running the football near the goal line against this Indiana team, that maybe they went to the run too heavy. I didn't feel watching it like they were trying to get a touchdown. I felt like they were, we're going to try to score a touchdown, but we're not going to do any harm. It was like one of those deals where it's not, you're not daring. And I'm not saying that passing the ball would have necessarily worked, although I think it probably would have had a better chance of that. But I felt like Michigan State was trying not to make a mistake instead of playing to win a game in that instance. And I just don't feel like they put themselves in the best position to win, given the elements outside. The stress involved with kicking under that in those circumstances, that's not how you're going to win a game. And to me, that's the disappointing thing. And I think the thing that Michigan State players have to do moving forward is, we've seen a lot of games where players have made a lot of mistakes and they've rallied around their coaches, but in a game like this, you wonder if your coaches could have put you in a better position to close this thing out. And it's going to be tough to keep these guys together going into a really difficult environment, because like those guys, Thorne and Henderson were talking about, this hurts a lot, because they all know that they played good enough in a lot of ways to win, and they didn't win. And, if you're a senior, what are you thinking about now? Is life beyond football? It's going to really stress the culture of this program. And I think that term is sometimes overused, but you will see how strong the culture is based on how well these guys stick together in their performance against Penn State in some ways.
I think we've been seeing that for the last 5 weeks.
I think we have, but I think this is the most this thing has been stressed. I think, because you battle all the way back. You put yourself in a position to make the most of a crappy season by everyone's definition within the program. And you can't get the job done, and everyone deserves blame for it. But some of it's beyond people's control as well. So this is why I say it's a continuous test of the culture, but this is a big test, because the culture got them here. They had a chance, and they should have clinched a bowl berth. Now can they get rebound from yet another disappointment, perhaps the biggest disappointment of the season, and make the best of a tough situation?
And that drive at regulation that Michigan State had was looking pretty impressive. They had Thorne had a 22-yarder to Mosley on a deep dig. 2nd and 20, they battled out of that with a 20-yard catch. For Thorne making some plays on that one. 4th and 2, they hit a little square out. Nice play call to Malik Carr. They basically posted up the slot defender. That all made sense. Some of the short yardage stuff, some of the red zone stuff gets a little bit wonky. Even in the second or the first one of the overtimes, Michigan State had like a 3rd and goal. I think it was the first overtime, 3rd and goal, like the 12-yard line, because they'd had a penalty. You get a penalty on procedure or whatever that was. Now it's 1st and goal from the 15. It was like it might have even been 3rd and goal. Yeah, it was like 3rd and goal from the 12-yard line. And that's when Thorne was pressured, ended up throwing it back to Mosley, like a freelance play, incomplete.
But they should have been caught, too.
Well, it's 3rd and 12, and they've got Coleman and Barker running a shallow cross, 2 shallow cross mesh at 4 yards. If you throw to either one of those guys, it's 3rd and goal at the 12.
Right.
Barker and Coleman are just useless on that play. I don't know, and it didn't seem to me like they were doing that to spring something else open. You saw Thorne didn't have anything.
Right. That was totally him pulling something out of his back pocket.
So I'm wondering, 3rd and goal at the 12. Why do you have Keon Coleman running a shallow cross at 2 yards? Things like that. When you red zone short yardage, they're just some things like I'm having trouble understanding that part of it. The two guys, Barker with his option route or whatever. I guess I don't know. Things like that. When you're up 31-14 on a team with a 7-game losing streak and you're trying to get bowl eligibility and you're at home and it's 20 degrees out here and the other team has every reason to quit, but you're the team that's making mistakes, all kinds of mistakes. And Thorne obviously despondent and discouraged. He can't come out and say it, but at some point, you got to look at the kicker and like, man, we were trying to win despite our kicker. And you and I talked about this back in August. The thing that nobody was talking about was you got Jack Stone coming in as a true freshman kicker. We've covered the team long enough that if you have a problem in the kicking situation, it can turn an 8-4 team into a 6-6 team in a hurry. Maybe this is a 7-5 team. I don't know, but they're turned into a 5-7 team.
And it's not just the kicker. It's part of it.
That's kind of what has to punctuate it at the end. They had this game won a real nice drive, play calls all the way down. Thorne making plays 4th and 2. They get down there, they set up Collins, executive decision on that cut, and they're a 5-6 team instead of 6-5.
Yeah, and it's hard to find fault with Collins for trying to scrap and get some.
That's what's strange, isn't that strange?
Yeah, because he had such a great game, and he was an absolute beast in this game.
Yeah. Great tenacity.
Michigan State. It's ironic to me that Michigan State had it's arguably its best rushing performance, or one of its best rushing performances in this game, but they were stopped on 4th down a couple of times. So the short yardage failures are something that continues, and the kicking game is it's the kicker part. That's part of it, but it's also the long snapper, and you get back to quality control. And I think the way Michigan State's kind of bounced back in some of this stuff, the last few weeks, you kind of start getting faith in the operation, in the program again.
Yeah.
But then you get back to the quality control and say, there's been times like during the D'Antonio era where Michigan State lost a long snapper. I've never seen during the D'Antonio era where Michigan State's backup long snappers have been, had so many issues with snapping. That's a quality control thing. Another quality control thing would be how in the world can you go into the season, enamored with not knowing that Amir Speed is going to be terrible at tackling, something that
just physical leverage at the corner position.
Something
that's quality control.
Something that Tucker works with corners. That's his job. He comes from the Saban background. Same with Harlan Barnett, that believes that there's no such thing as a cover corner. You need to be a complete corner, and not to have that. Not to know that going into the season, not to know that some linebackers are really going to struggle, playing, between the tackles with gap responsibility, with stopping the run, with just instinctual stuff. Like, how do you not know that? And so there's all these little things, personnel stuff aside, play calling aside, you just wonder, like, did Did you not know that going into the season? And these are things that have hurt Michigan State on a consistent basis from the get-go until now. They're just they're amplified now because the stakes are so high.
Right. And Tucker, I think, has done a really good job rallying this team and keeping them focused. I think all of his little, his philosophies and everything got them to this point with some terrible, tough things that happened earlier in the season. And beneath him, where things are delegated to some of those areas of quality control, slippage, quality control, whatever you want to call it. A lot of people talking about whether that needs to be reviewed. A lot of fans want to see coordinators gone. That's what happens in college football when a team struggles. I started to say underachieves, but I'm not sure underachieves is the right word. I thought this was a team that could go 7-5, maybe 8-4.
It's hard to say underachieves when you've got as much adversity as these guys have faced. It started out with injuries, then you've got to add on the suspensions. These guys have kind of continued in the last few weeks, hit their head on the ceiling in some ways. I do believe what Tucker's saying, that, this is a team with very, very little margin for error. But when you're a team with that little margin for error, then your coaches have to put you in the best possible position to be the best version of yourselves that you can be. And it's up to Tucker to decide at the end of the season whether that's been the case. I do feel like Michigan State's defense in a lot of ways has done some really good things with a poor hand. Now, you can say, well, they gave up that many yards today and they gave up that many yards last week. And I'll say, again, if that had been the case with a full complement of defensive ends or, not having as many injuries, then maybe I'd agree with you. But those are questions whether it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what Tucker thinks, and maybe he makes changes, maybe he doesn't, maybe it is simply we had more injuries than we could ever have possibly sustained. But coaches have to be better, and they'll say that behind closed doors, but you have to put your team in a better position to win than they were today. And it seemed like as easy as Michigan State was moving the ball up and down the field on Indiana, then it shouldn't have been that difficult to pick up short yardage.
They should have. If you kick a field goal and win the game, you won the game despite giving up a kickoff return for a touchdown and an 80-yard touchdown run. Those two plays, interception in your own 30-yard line, hold them to a field goal there, but they're just walking on thin ice they kept giving Indiana a breath of life, some free plays, maybe not free plays. Indiana earned some of those. That's why it was so close to that so similar to that Illinois game that Michigan State suffered the big comeback loss in that one. By the way, in that game, I think Elijah Collins rushed for about 160 yards in that game as a redshirt freshman in 2019. That was a Michigan State team that basically had a real good defense, ended up going to the Red Box Bowl and losing to an Oregon team that had a strong brand at the time. But you start thinking, a couple weeks ago, people were like, I don't want Quick Lane Bowl. I heard some people around town saying that. Other people say that they did want it. Right now, you don't realize how big it is to go 6-5 and to get to a bowl game until you lose a game like this, and now all of a sudden you're on the outside looking in, and it's painful for Michigan State. And you don't come into a game hoping you go 6-6 and go to the Quick Lane Bowl, but in late September, I wouldn't have thought that was possible. After the way they played against Minnesota, I was like, man, this team could go 3-9, 4-8, and that team that played against Minnesota would have gone 4-8. But there were circumstances at that time, and still circumstances when they played Maryland. But they played better as they went along and played good football in the middle of the year. And rallied to the point where they were up 24-7 at halftime, chance to go 6-5, close it out at home, and feel good not only about the game, but getting something done in the season and feeling good about the program. Instead, they fumbled all that away, and I know no one feels worse about it than they do. But we've seen a lot of tough losses over the time here at Michigan State. But a loss like this at the end of the season, usually when you have a tough loss, it might be in the middle of the season, you still can rebound and still build towards something. Right now, man, it's a tough one for Michigan State football right now.
Yeah, because it's all about getting achievable objectives. Michigan State had an achievable objective. Yeah, making the most of a really difficult season. Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want to go 6-6. No, nobody does. But 6-6 is better than
and also
the alternative.
If you get to 6-6 at this point in the year, if you win this game, it's like every single week builds into the next month, into the next season. It's like Mel Tucker said when they went 11-2 and beat Pittsburgh. He's like, the process never ends. You're always trying to improve your situation, improve your position, and then you go into recruiting and winter football and spring football and the off season in the summer, and then you just build. Then in September and October, you look at the scoreboard, see where you are, and you get graded. Then you just keep working. So at the end of this season, yeah, you're not going to win the Big Ten East and all those things, but in terms of building as a program, they really had a chance to solidify that foundation further with a win today and being competitive at Penn State next week. And the error on that one has taken a serious blow.
And kind of why I feel bad for the seniors beyond the loss today. I felt like if they had gotten to a bowl game, that would be part of their legacy, passing on the perseverance aspect that we've seen from other teams in the past. You think of like that Pinstripe Bowl team, some of those dudes like Raekwon Williams, Mike Panishuk, some of those guys passing on resilience to dudes like Xavier Henderson. And it was kind of, in my opinion, it was his turn and the turn of guys like Elijah Collins and Jacob Slade to pass that on to these young guys that are coming up behind them. These young guys that are about to take this program over. And so it's like, to me, doubly disappointed because the legacy of these seniors, if they don't get bowl eligible, is going to be a losing legacy, in some degree through no fault of their own. You think of a guy like Xavier Henderson; he's put it all on the field this year, coming back from injury, the disappointment of being injured after you come back, for your senior season. But it's really disappointing to me, from my perspective, that these seniors can't have as a feather in their cap, the fact that they helped sustain or build the culture of the program, that they've been part of and worked so hard in for the last several years.
And it was looking like it was going to be a big day for Elijah Collins. It was going to be a storybook day, a senior coming in. The other two running backs get hurt. Probably not his last game here. He's probably coming back next year. But senior day storylines, Collins running hard, delivering them to victory, getting to 6-5. It was setting up that way. Then he made a little mistake that he'll regret. What did it cost them the game? Everyone had little errors and foibles that led to this. Tough one for Michigan State. Mel Tucker, pretty. I don't want to say, he's always even keel and wants to go back to neutral and all those things, but you could tell this one bothered him. I don't remember a loss. He's only been here for 3 years, but I don't remember a loss bothering him this much. I mean, he was angry after what went on in Ann Arbor for a lot of reasons, but this one, it's like, man, you could tell this one hurt them. I know it hurt the fans too. Anything else, Paul?
Yeah, just when you take a loss in a game that you think that you should win, if you play your B plus game or whatever, it's going to hurt more. This was a game that Michigan State had to win. They should have won, being at home. Had so many things going in their favor. We're up so big. This is really painful, and it's going to sting. And there's no way to take that sting away. The problem is if you lose next weekend, then you're living with this thing the whole off season.
That's right.
Now, can it fuel you? I think in some instances it can during off season, but
you'd rather have the alternative.
Yeah,
that can fuel you even better, right?
I'd if I'm a young dude like you think of some of the younger guys on this team, if I'm a freshman playing right now, I'd much rather be fueled by, hey, I got my feet wet, I did some good things as a freshman in tough circumstances. Now I'm going to use this offseason as a springboard to go into a bigger role. It's a lot different when you're fueled by disappointment.
Are there any other decisions that were out here that the fans are probably complaining about or questioning, their calls that we didn't touch on? I think there's only a small handful of things.
No, they're going to be upset with the first series. I mean, that short yardage, just play calling. I don't even know if it's always play calling. I do believe that there is an execution component, but if the same guys are failing to execute the same similar type of plays over and over again, then I wonder if you need to go in a different direction. I think tight ends were, some of those running plays, the tight ends didn't do a great job, but at the end of the day, hugely disappointing.
And, we're kind of splitting hairs on some of these things because there's not many plays you can find that screwed everything up when you have an edge of 29-11 in touchdowns, and you have an edge in first downs. I'm sorry, and an edge in total offense of 540 to 288. When you have that kind of edge, it's not like you're losing a lot of plays. Total offensive plays 90. Michigan State ran 90 plays, and Indiana ran 51. When you're getting that kind of statistical dominance, it's not like you can go back and see a big, long string of plays that went wrong. It's just a small handful.
Right.
That's what makes this one even harder for Michigan State to stomach. And Michigan State will pick it up and try to get something going at Penn State next week. They'll be decided underdogs. It'll be all up again. Wind will be against them that day also, and we'll see what they can do. Try to pull themselves up. Anything else, Paul? Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni. Thanks to Spartan Mag fans and Maggers for sticking with us and being with us as we cover the Spartans, your Spartans. And today in East Lansing, very blustery day again. A lot of credit to the fans that were out there that withstood those conditions. And we'll be covering this team next week into the basketball season, and we'll be keeping our ear to the ground to see what's going on with this team. And you know that we'll do that to the best of our ability. For Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni. You've been watching the VCast from East Lansing, Spartan Stadium, SpartanMag.com.